Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in a couple of hours from now we are gonna get a new Battlegrounds meta, the final meta for season 14, and this is the important one because this will decide where your final standings end up in the season. So it's super important we kind of get it right. So let's break it down. We're gonna go over some champions I expect to work well, some champions I don't, and obviously what are going to be the better defenders. And this meta in itself is going to be kind of completely different to the previous one, because right now, if a champion worked, if you could inflict damage over time effect, you could basically finish all the fights because of the power shield and you being able to do a ton of damage in between, obviously, the red scare, increasing your dot damage, and then power shield, allowing you to hit very hard, which resulted in absolute nuke fights if you had a good matchup. This is going to be opposite, from a sense that every champion will be able to do damage, just very, very slowly, right? And here, the more compatible matchup will obviously win, but it will not be as fast of a meta, inevitably, because in between Safeguard and Adamant Axiom, which basically disables you from, well, using ability accuracy reduction nodes to bypass Safeguard, that will mean it's slower. Now, there are some good news, though, because champions with Poison or Incinerate, frequently their hits, will get the 40% attack, and then obviously also if offensive dot champions, then the Wishes is still going to increase the dot damage. So you do get a bit of help in the damage department, because remember that all of the dot champions, typically, or most of the dot champions, do scale their damage over time effects with attack rating. So champions with Incinerate and with Poison are going to be kind of like extra good, or will have extra level of attack and will be faster. That said, ultimately, overall, this meta is still going to be slower. We have had Safeguard meta in past, and yeah, it wasn't a very, very fast meta in general, and that was when we could still use ability accuracy reduction to bypass it. Now we can't. So, which champions should be doing a good job? So, well, first of all, obviously, we have the offensive dot champions with the hashtag that will be benefiting from it. As I mentioned before, Poison and Incinerate are especially valuable, so I-Bomb is going to be doing great. I do think that a bunch of these champions, most of these champions, to be honest, do have alternate sources of damage, and that will work just fine. So, moving on, we have, besides I-Bomb, which was here, we also have Cassie Lang, which I think will do just great, because Cassie can be played quite easily without having to stun the opponent, because the other node that I didn't quite talk enough was Stunning Reflection, where basically you can't parry. That is going to be the bane of this meta, by the way, because every time we are going to parry by accident, whether we want it or not, and that's going to be frustrating and devastating. If you use Incinerate or Poison champions, then there's a decent chance that this stun shield could be on cooldown. So Cassie does have access to Poison as well. It's not her main thing. Her main thing is obviously the Power Stings. And Power Stings do bypass Safeguard in a sense. That is something I kind of need to explain a fair few times, because we can see that the Power Sting deals a burst of 1,374 direct damage to the opponent in case of maxed out Cassie Lang. And that would mean that as long as opponent's health pool is bigger than 137k, each Power Sting will still do its full damage, because whenever those big chunks of Power Sting damage are calculated, it's actually like each individual number just added up. So for stuff like Power Sting, for instance, as long as each Power Sting is lower than the 1% of the Safeguard limit, you will do the full damage with Cassie, and you will still be able to do like massive bursts of damage every time the opponent activates the special attack, so Cassie should be working just fine. Human Torch is obviously going to be very good too. I am not too sure whether not using the pre-fight when possible would be the way to go, because I actually imagine that could be. There's going to be some testing, because then you can Incinerate, and when incinerated you can actually freely parry. Obviously no flames would not disable the Stunning Reflection, and you would not get the 40% attack increase. So I'm quite sure that whenever possible you will want to not use the pre-fight for once. So that's quite interesting. Void will still be great, obviously, because Void's dot also will get around The safeguard, I mean, it's not dot effects to be clear, so he will not benefit from the vicious passives, most likely, but his direct damage from placing debuffs is a very, very good source of alternate damage, and majority of Void's damage comes from that, if not majority, a significant part, so I expect Void to be a very present champion in this meta. Quicksilver, similar thing with Cassie. Your bursts, again, are calculated individually, not as one single detonation. So as long as opponent's health is, if you have maxed out 6-star Quicksilver, then as long as the opponent's max health is bigger than 2.2k, he's still going to do his normal damage. And his hit damage is split in between like 15 hits on a base combo, so he'll never reach that to begin with. So yeah, Quicksilver should be very, very good champion for this meta. Obviously, Scorpion still going to do great. Same thing with his burst damage too, by the way. Then we're going to have somebody like Black Cat, who's going to be amazing as well, because a lot of her damage comes from bleeds that she's able to maintain, and that will definitely help her out as well, though you will not be able to access stun. Then Shield should be a very, very strong two-way champion, because she does have a lot of dot, and she does have a lot of purify, so in theory, I think you will still be able to parry, just like, make sure you have a purify charge, parry, purify debuff, and then, keep spamming heavy attacks and do a lot of bleed damage. And she should be good on defense too. Elsa should be absolutely amazing for this. Like, quite literally, Elsa Bloodstone should be crazy, crazy, crazy good for this, because she can get easy openings with her evade mechanic. She has, when awakened, the red burst damage. She does have Incinerate as well, and if opponents are Incinerate immune, you can still go to Cold Snap. So yeah, I do think Elsa is going to be great. Massacre should be absolutely phenomenal yet again. In this meta, obviously, you'll primarily want to spam your level 1s, but in between the dot and them being Incinerates and you getting 40% attack increase, you should be doing a very, very good job. Nick should be quite solid in general. Jabari Panther should be, in theory, able to do some very, very good things, because remember, when you enter the hunt, first of all, you will be able to shrug off those stuns with her, and then when you enter the hunt mode and you drop your heavy attack while the hunt is active, you can get a ton of bleeds on the opponent based on each bleed that they already have, so there can be some serious bleed damage coming out of Jabari Panther as well. And Kate is going to be making a comeback, I believe. Now, initially, it does seem kind of counterintuitive, because Kate Bishop obviously stuns on parries, and that is not what you want to do. And that is going to be kind of like the key thing using Kate Bishop in the next meta. You will want to avoid parrying at all, right? So you will not want to do the well-timed block thing at all. But other than that, you should be able to use Kate Bishop relatively normally. Just, maybe some more block damage and stuff like that. And then, her dot is crazy good. She should be one of the faster attackers in the meta, I think, overall. Then we have Archangel, again, slightly harder to use, but he should be good to go. Just, initial bits you'll have to do with the full 5-hit combos to get some bleeds on until you either get the Striker going, because you will be able to use Striker and then get a heavy attack, and then at that point you should have some bleeds, just hold the block, let the poison kick in, and once you get them poisoned, you should be able to parry freely. Onslaught should be working reasonably well also. Shouldn't have much issues with Onslaught, maybe a little harder to use, but most of his damage comes from damage over time. Toad should still be great, obviously inflicts poisons, so he will be able to parry freely, will have 40% attack increase to pump up those poisons along with the vicious passives, and that passive poison should be doing quite a lot of damage. Then we're going to have Turi. Again, slightly harder to use because you cannot parry, aside from parrying special attack hits, but overall should be quite good. I think a sleeper pick could be Penny Parker here, because this is going to be quite hard to destroy her shield. That's number one. And number two, this meta she can actually gain power, and the level 2 basically completely bypasses all of the safeguard stuff, because you're going to be inflicting Incinerates that deal a lot of damage over time, which is going to be great, and you will also do the burst damage. And the burst damage, again, is calculated per spider charge, so it should be individual sets of burst damage that should be able to bypass safeguards. Hyperion, Incinerate, Power Gain, lots of dot effect. I think Hyperion's still going to be great. Then we're going to have Hercules making comeback for sure, because he's going to be great at stalling the fight with his Infuriate and then Immortality, obviously. And then lastly, we're also going to have finally a chance to use him offensively. He's not going to be the fastest option, but because he gets a secondary burst of damage, at least, you're going to be doing more than 1% per hit. You're going to be doing 2.2% per hit, and that should make him at the very least decent offensively too. Vox, in theory, should shine here quite well. I don't see anything stopping Vox, and he's one of the few cosmic champions that should be able to dish out a crazy good damage here with his degens for sure. Then we have Gore, which in theory should work well. Kushala should be great, again, level 1. Level 2 is this time she gains power normally, so she should be very, very strong and powerful too. And we're still going to have Tigra working just perfectly. And we're going to have Werewolf by Night, who's not going to be as crazy, but he's still going to be very, very good. So still going to be somebody to watch out for. And then we're going to have Wiccan, who can work great in the last meta, and he has Incinerates too, so the 40% attack increase. Hood will be able to bypass the Safeguard quite easily too, and then obviously Diablo with the poisons. On the defensive end, and you notice that not too many mutants were great, so still I do think skill champions will be some of the, dominant defenders. I think Baron Zemo is going to be crazy good still. Obviously the Korg Kingpin is going to be crazy good defender and somewhat decent on offense because he will at least have his degen. So that should work. Obviously Nick Fury is kind of like a given as a defender. Mole should still be a quite good defender. Shield, obviously. Since that class is not going to work that great in general. And other than that, it's going to be kind of like your regular suspects, I think. If you have a highly ranked King Groot, ironically now since we're talking about nameless King Groot, I think King Groot could potentially be good if you can safeguard him from mystics. Your immune champions, your shrug of champions, or just in general your large health pool champions. Another subcategory of champs that could do better than normal could be something like Mordo and Wong and the other champions. No, sorry, the champions that like Wong could be quite annoying, or champions that require you to stun them or heavily encourage you to stun them. We'll see how well they do, but as Wong should be relatively decent offensively too. And the fact that unless you have the Incinerator Poison champion, you can't stun him will inevitably end up forcing people to take some burst damage. So that could be something to look into as well. But in general, I still think the skill class can primarily dominate on the defense like it has done. That's pretty much it, I think, for the most part. Let me know what you guys think. What are your predictions? What are the champions that you think are going to do great that I didn't mention? And yeah, that is it for now. I'm going to catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Whoops, wrong button. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about